And then for Thunderbolt's benefit, if you're still here watching, my friend, we will talk about the Sparrows, the radar, and try and execute an attack. Appreciate the follows there too, folks, very much. Keeps the channel moving. So the first thing I'm going to talk about the Sparrows while we're on our way over is that you have several variants that are available to the F4 and are scattered across other aircraft too, but there's some specific things for the F4 to keep in mind depending upon which version of the Sparrow you're loaded with. The AIM-7E, the Echo variant, regardless of type, it could be an E1, an E2, an E3, doesn't matter, need 4 seconds of continuous lock time from the radar for the missile to sink its seeker head, promise I can speak, to the actual emitted radiation onto the target by your own radar. So you'll hear Jester count 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, 4, fire. And he does that regardless of what Sparrow variant you're using, because that's kind of the way he's coded. But the E variant in particular needs those 4 seconds before the weapon is ready to shoot. The Foxtrot variant requires 2 seconds of such time. So 1 potato, 2 potato you could shoot. The Mike variant, the AIM-7M, which I'm using here in this mission today, as it is set for 1982, and that's when that missile became more widely available for us, does not need that time at all. As soon as you've got the target locked, you can pull the trigger and send it on its way. That's kind of the first thing. The second thing we're going to talk about, especially like right now while we're just kind of cruising, is you got the radar display. It is sweeping left to right and back again. Jester's doing kind of a 2-bar search with that right now, and you can see he's changing the radar elevation ever so slightly as he's making those scans, trying to look for targets and keep the skies clear. But we have a lot of marks here. This area down here on the bottom are ground returns. We know that because it is extremely dense. The rest of these areas here, though, where we've got all these little flickers, are false echoes, which could be a result of either the main lobe of the radar or the side lobe of the radar picking up ground clutter from other aspects of the system. And since the F4 does not have a pulse Doppler computer or anything on there to filter that out, you are getting all of the information at once. iHort, who's always here on the channel and occasionally jumps in on the streams here with me and flies with me a lot, has forgotten more things about radar than most people have learned in a lifetime, and could fill you in on some of the exacting details as to why. Not necessarily necessary for understanding how things work in DCS, but do keep in mind that Heapler has modeled those things, especially with the F4, as close as they can, which is why you get all these little flickers, because those are all of the false echoes that you're getting, which can be confusing. What you are looking for if you're operating in the back seat or if you're monitoring Jester from the front seat are returns that don't disappear between scans. That is usually an indicator of a real target or a real radar return. So like this one right here that I got the cursor on right now, it's sweeping by every once in a while, and it's fading in and it's fading out. That is a false return. That's not real. But as we turn around and actually start tracking one, let's go ahead and communicate with Magic first and ask for bogey dope, which is going to tell us where the nearest threat he can see is to us. No, that's definitely not it, buddy.
Magic 1-1 in field 2. Request bogey dope.
I know we got targets closer than that.
1-1 in field 2. Request bogey dope.
They could be flying a beam to the AWACS right now, though. So we'll hunt for them ourselves. There we go. Okay. So Jester is looking. Actually, I need to tell Jester to open his mouth again. He lost him. Because again, he's... Pause here for a second. There is one concept that we do need to cover here right before we get into all of this, and that is how a target maneuvers and moves is how sometimes it feels like the radar just mysteriously lost a track, lost a target. And that has everything to do with the fact that if the target is moving towards you, it is giving you a nice strong radar return. If you're flying an aircraft that has a pulse Doppler filter, it is outside of the speed gate for the aircraft's radar to go, that's the ground. That's a real target, which is basically how that works. It filters things out by going, if this target is moving at exactly the same speed as the aircraft, it is most likely a ground return. Forget about it. Don't look at it anymore. So when the aircraft is flying straight at you or straight away from you, and the speed differences are significant enough, usually the radar can figure out which one of those things is the real target. If they're flying a beam to you, or in such a way where that speed is underneath that threshold for the range or the speed gate for the aircraft, you're flying in what's called the notch, which is where the aircraft goes, yep, that's probably a ground return, I'm going to forget about it, drops the lock. The F4 doesn't have any of those kinds of filters, because it's an older aircraft, you're getting all of the raw data from the aircraft itself. But when an aircraft is flying a beam to the radar, that is, crossing its T or flying perpendicular to your aircraft or nearly so, it is possible for your radar to not see the radar return and lose it. Depending upon the orientation of the aircraft, the size of the target, whether it's edge on to you or not, all of that energy that you are broadcasting needs to have a strong enough surface to reflect off of it for your radar to interpret that as a signal that it can latch onto. So if the aircraft is maneuvering in that fashion, and that's also why the AWACS just called a target for me 092 for 17 miles. And I asked earlier, and he was like, oh yeah, no, there's stuff that's 80, 90 miles away from you. Well, from where the aircraft or the AWACS is at, it did a little scan with its radar. And based on how the air target was flying at the time, it was like, nope, that's probably a ground return, and it just ignored it, so it lost track of the target. So we're going to go ahead and unpause, and hopefully Jester's going to pick up our target here again within the next moment or two, and we'll try and engage him with a Sparrow. Yep, he's got it. So as we can see, this is a radar return. It is a solid signal. It is lasting between targets.
Left 5, 18 miles. Bingo, good luck.
So now we have him locked up. It is still difficult to determine whether or not he's going to be a legitimate target, but broadly speaking, if we have a stable range gate, if that's not bouncing all over the damn place, and if he's not maneuvering super hard so the intercept dot is flying all over the place, like now he's starting to turn so it's going to wiggle a bit, this is most likely a good lock. If those range gates are constantly fluctuating, you most likely have a false return. And those range gates, that's kind of that equal bar down there on the bottom. Those are set by the Wizzo. Jester will try and set them for you a little bit better, but he's not perfect. So, we're going to try and fly the intercept a little bit here, which is that dot. We're going to try and put that in the center. And he's seen us, so he's starting to turn to look at us. Now we're in range. Master arm on, box 1. Another good telltale sign,
And
that missile's tracking. It turned. And we can see our target out here off the nose. Missile's pursuing. He probably defeated it. Fox 1 again. Nope, he's dead. He's dead. It found him.
12 o'clock.
Glad the interlock saved me on that one.